In the turbulent years following World War I, Germany found itself in economic turmoil, social unrest, and political chaos. The nation was bruised, broken, and battered, its pride and economy in tatters. It was a time of desperation and despair, a time when the seeds of discontent could easily be sown and nurtured. And in this fertile ground of chaos and confusion, a dictator was born. Adolf Hitler, the son of a stern Austrian customs official, was born in the year 1889. An aspiring artist in his youth, Hitler's life took a dramatic turn when he served as a soldier in the Great War. The experience scarred him deeply, fueling a burning resentment that would later ignite his political career. After the war, Hitler found himself in a Germany that was struggling to find its footing. The Treaty of Versailles had left the country crippled and humiliated. The economy was in shambles, with unemployment rampant and hyperinflation making the currency worthless. The people were desperate for change, for someone to blame, and for a leader who could restore their lost pride and prosperity. Enter Adolf Hitler. In the early 20s, he joined a small political group called the German Workers' Party. A powerful speaker with a knack for tapping into the public's fears and frustrations, Hitler quickly rose through the ranks. The party, under his influence, evolved into the National Socialist German Workers' Party, more commonly known as the Nazi Party. Hitler's message was simple and seductive. Germany was not to blame for its problems. Instead, it was the work of internal enemies and international conspiracies. He promised to restore Germany to its former glory, to create a new empire where pure-blooded Germans could thrive. And so, amidst a perfect storm of economic distress, political instability, and social unrest, a dictator took his first steps towards power. Born in Austria in 1889, Adolf Hitler served in World War I and later joined the German Workers' Party, which would eventually evolve into the National Socialist German Workers' Party, or the Nazi Party. With his charismatic oratory skills and nationalist rhetoric, Hitler quickly gained popularity among disillusioned Germans who were seeking a scapegoat for their hardships. But how did a man of such humble beginnings rise to wield such immense power? Born in Austria in 1889, Hitler was a decorated veteran of World War I. After the war, he settled in Munich and joined the German Workers' Party, which would later evolve into the National Socialist German Workers' Party, or the Nazi Party. Hitler's fiery speeches focused on German nationalism, anti-Semitism, and anti-communism resonated with the party's supporters. As the party grew, so did Hitler's influence. By 1921, he was the leader of the Nazi Party. He was arrested in 1923 for a failed coup attempt known as the Beer Hall Putsch. While in prison, he wrote Mein Kampf, a book outlining his political ideology and future plans for Germany. After his release, Hitler worked to rebuild the Nazi Party and gain political power through legitimate means. He cleverly manipulated the emotions of the masses, promising to restore Germany's former glory and blaming the country's economic woes on the Treaty of Versailles and the perceived threats of Jews and communists. In 1932, the Nazi Party became the largest party in the German parliament. The following year, Hitler was appointed Chancellor of Germany by President Paul von Hindenburg. This appointment was a critical step in Hitler's rise to power. The Reichstag fire in February 1933 was a pivotal moment. Hitler used the event to convince Hindenburg to issue a decree that suspended many civil liberties and gave Hitler's government the power to arrest and imprison political opponents without trial. In 1933, following the Reichstag fire, Hitler seized upon the opportunity to consolidate power. Using fear and intimidation, he convinced President Hindenburg to grant him emergency powers, effectively dismantling democracy. This marked the beginning of Hitler's totalitarian rule and set the stage for the atrocities that would follow under his regime. Once in power, Hitler wasted no time in implementing his radical agenda. His vision for Germany was not just about economic recovery or regaining national pride. Instead, he sought to build a totalitarian state, a nation where every aspect of life was controlled by the ruling party. His first order of business was the suppression of dissent. Hitler and the Nazi Party swiftly moved to quash any opposition, be it political, intellectual, or social. Trade unions were disbanded, political parties were outlawed, and the free press was muzzled. The infamous Enabling Act of 1933 allowed Hitler to pass laws without the consent of the Reichstag, effectively rendering the parliament obsolete. But the regime's iron fist didn't stop at stifling opposition voices. Hitler initiated a ruthless campaign to eliminate those he deemed undesirable or threats to his Aryan ideal. This included Jews, Romani people, homosexuals, disabled individuals, and others. The brutal night of the Long Knives saw the purge of the SA, Hitler's own paramilitary organization, to consolidate his control over the German army. Then, there was the propaganda machine. Hitler, along with his propaganda minister Joseph Goebbels, skillfully manipulated mass media to indoctrinate the German people. They used radio broadcasts, films, newspapers, and rallies to spread their ideology, instill fear, and create an image of Hitler as Germany's savior. Censorship was another weapon in Hitler's arsenal. Books that didn't align with Nazi ideology were burned in public squares. Art, music, and films were heavily censored or outright banned if they were deemed degenerate or un-German. State-sponsored violence became a horrifying norm. The notorious Gestapo, or secret state police, and the SS enforced Hitler's policies with brutal efficiency. They arrested, tortured, and murdered anyone who dared to oppose the regime. Under Hitler's regime, the Nazi Party exerted total control over every aspect of German life. Propaganda, censorship, and state-sponsored violence became tools of oppression, as Hitler sought to mold Germany into a totalitarian state. The horrors of the Holocaust, the invasion of neighboring countries, and the devastation of World War II are enduring reminders of Hitler's reign of terror. As Hitler's grip on Germany tightened, he set in motion a systematic campaign of genocide. The Holocaust, as it came to be known, resulted in the murder of 6 million Jews. Jews were rounded up, forcibly deported to concentration camps, and subjected to inhumane conditions. Many were executed in gas chambers, while others succumbed to starvation, disease, and forced labor. This brutal genocide remains one of the darkest chapters in human history. Simultaneously, Hitler was also expanding his territorial ambitions. He annexed Austria and the Sudetenland region of Czechoslovakia, breaching the terms of the Treaty of Versailles. These aggressive actions set the stage for the outbreak of World War II. In 1939, Hitler invaded Poland, triggering a global conflict that would last 6 years and claim the lives of over 70 million people. World War II was marked by unprecedented devastation. Cities were reduced to rubble, economies were shattered, and countless lives were lost. The war also saw the use of atomic weapons for the first and only time in history, further highlighting the destructive potential of warfare. In the end, Hitler's reign of terror came to a halt. His grand visions of a 1,000-year Reich crumbled as Allied forces closed in. In 1945, Hitler died by suicide in his bunker in Berlin. His death marked the end of World War II in Europe and the beginning of a long process of rebuilding and reconciliation. The legacy of Hitler's regime is a chilling testament to the depths of human cruelty and the catastrophic consequences of unchecked power. It underscores the importance of vigilance and the collective responsibility to prevent such atrocities from happening again. Adolf Hitler's rise to power serves as a stark warning about the dangers of unchecked authoritarianism and the importance of safeguarding democracy and human rights. Adolf Hitler's rise to power serves as a stark warning about the dangers of unchecked authoritarianism and the importance of safeguarding democracy and human rights. But what lessons have we as a global society drawn from this dark chapter in our collective history? In the aftermath of World War II, nations across the globe came together to say never again. The United Nations was established with peace, justice, and human rights at its core. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights was adopted, enshrining the inherent dignity and equal rights of all members of the human family. And yet, the lessons of history are not static. They are not confined to textbooks or museums. They are living, breathing reminders that we must constantly strive to uphold the values we hold dear. Democracy, for instance, is not simply a system of government. It's a constant dialogue, a robust exchange of ideas, and a shared commitment to the common good. And human rights? They are not simply legal protections. They are the very essence of our humanity. They are the recognition that every individual, regardless of race, religion, gender, or nationality, has inherent worth and dignity. But these lessons are not self-executing. They require vigilance, courage, and active participation from each and every one of us. We must be willing to stand up against injustice, to speak out against intolerance, and to work tirelessly for a more inclusive, equitable, and just world. And above all, we must remember the millions of lives lost to Hitler's reign of terror. We must remember the voices that were silenced, the dreams that were shattered, and the human potential that was extinguished. We must remember not to dwell in the past, but to illuminate the path forward, to ensure that the lessons of history are not forgotten, but rather serve as a beacon for our collective journey towards a more peaceful, just, and humane world. Never forget, learn from history.